So here we go. Shifting the paradigm through social media and storytelling. I noted this morning with Barbara's Wheel of Co-Creation that the trajectory of light exits in the area of media. And I think that that's apropos, because it's there that we can illuminate all of the other sectors. The shortest distance between two people is a story. And I think Philip, in sharing his story, reached each of us and was a great example of that. Story is more powerful than any weapon. And more than warriors, storytellers have influenced the way we've evolved as a race. This is a quote by a dear friend of mine and colleague, Jeff Gomez. So I asked the question, how can storytelling and social media as an aspect of that help us to build this new world? I'm going to take a step back and share with you a bit of my story. After a very successful career in theater, I moved to Los Angeles and I wrote a screenplay that ended up becoming very well known. It won one of the most prestigious awards in Hollywood, and then it went on the market and sold in 2 hours in a high six-figure deal. And I experienced my first encounter with Gatekeepers. This particular story was about a group of monks who were forced to go on rock and roll tour when their chant album went to #1. And it was really a story about if you follow your heart, you'll find your calling. But at the base of this story was this group of monks who, with this very sacred music or chant, were changing and touching the world that they entered. This script sold to one of the biggest companies in Hollywood. And I said, I don't want to close the deal until we go and meet with these people, because I really want to understand who we're going to be working with. This is going to be a few years of my life with them. And I went into that meeting, and in that meeting, I was told, oh, we have to switch this around. You know, this is really a fish out of water story. We've got to see how the monks are changed by their encounters with the secular world. That's what's more important. Not how the sacred has the ability to touch the world. And I left that meeting, and I went into the parking garage, and I called my lawyer, and I called my agent, and I said, oh, we're not closing the deal. These are not the right people for this story. And it was a battle. I mean, the agency were furious. They said to me, you're destroying your career. You're one of the bright hopes as a screenwriter, and you know, you're going to have no career if you do this. And I said, you know, that's not what's important to me. Storytelling is a sacred act. And we're not the inventors of story, we're the channels of story. And our role as storytellers is to steward that story into the world. We don't own it. We're bringing it into the world. So these are the gatekeepers that you might be aware of. 90% of the media owning, you know, 6 companies owning 90% of the media. My second experience with the Gatekeepers was having made a film and being in Berlin where that film premiered, and being invited to dinner with 6 of the most important acquisitions people. And sitting at that dinner and having the revelation that I didn't share a worldview with a single one of those people at the table. And yet these were the people who would be the gatekeepers for the kind of stories that I am compelled to tell. I left the industry and I spent the next 10 years in my garden. Not only in my garden, I had my daughter, I raised my child, and I had no intention of ever returning to the media industry. And then I ended up in Dominor. And that changed everything. Because what I found there, as I said to you yesterday, was the most extraordinary story that I had seen on the planet. A group of 600 people who have come together to create a new world, to create a new culture, to be a beacon for the rest of the world into what's possible. A community of practical dreamers whose work is very much in the physical, not in the ideologic. So everything had changed. And in that 10 years I had been away, indeed everything had changed. From the tools that we have to reach our audience to the audience itself, an alchemy has emerged that has provided us with the foundation to use media to truly shift our world through storytelling. The new generation are participants and creators. They're not viewers. We're no longer in the age of passive entertainment. Every single one of our audience members, to be engaged, needs to have agency in the story world that we're bringing to them. This week, and this is an old statistic, so this statistic is actually 2 years old, so this has gone up. I haven't found what the current statistic is, but 2 years ago, humanity was spending 3 billion hours a week in a virtual game world. A boy in the United States, by the time he's reached 18 years old, 99% of male children in our country have been in an online game world. 94% of the girls of our country, by the time they reach the age of 18, have been in an online game world. 912.5 million hours a week in a mobile game world 2 years ago. 91% of the population of this planet owns a mobile phone now. 91%. Online game worlds, what are these kids looking for? What are these, not just kids, the demographic for online game worlds is also weighted toward middle-aged women. I mean, the demographic is broad. Humanity is exiting the real world in droves. And what are they looking for there? You know, they're looking for urgent optimism, the belief that you can ultimately be successful even if you experience numerous failures. A social fabric. The belief that others in your universe will help you. Blissful productivity. The desire to work hard and purposefully to accomplish your mission. And epic meaning. The belief that individually one is capable of changing the world. Aren't these qualities that all of us in the transition movement share with those gamers? We have the potential of a captive audience. This is an example from a few years ago of a game world. This was an augmented reality game called World Without Oil.
Gas prices jumped to over $4 a gallon.
This group of people agreed to play that this was true for a period of time.
Police state going on in the streets now.
We're all in this together.
This is our local farmers market.
Jing, it's peak profit.
Calendar.
This was one of the first generations of socially conscious gaming. So a critical number of people agreed to play a scenario for a period of time. And they blogged about it, they communicated, they were in touch with one another. And the end result of that was that the group of people who participated in this game world in fact, in their daily life after playing the game, decrease their energy usage by a substantial level. This game, this fabricated game, ended up having a deep social impact for each of the people who had agreed to participate in that. So this is a tool that we have as storytellers now. Another tool is YouTube. Every 9 days, more video is uploaded to YouTube than the entire broadcast history of the BBC. My daughter doesn't watch television. My daughter subscribes to 250 YouTube channels. We live in a small town in Italy. She knows more about American culture than I would bet most kids who live here do. This is the early days of social networking. This is a few days ago. Social networks are growing exponentially. We're connecting based on our personal interest, we're connecting based on our personal missions. We're connected in all of these different platforms. Something else interesting is happening. Right now, the world's largest taxi company, worth $40 billion, owns no cars. The world's largest hotel company, Airbnb, owns no real estate. The largest retailer, Alibaba.com, owns no or produces no product. And Facebook, the world's largest content provider, produces no content. We are transitioning from the age of ownership to the age of access. This is what Jerome was addressing for the future. It's not the future, it's now. This is an umbrella of crowdsourcing. This is an umbrella of crowdsourcing. So we're not only connecting through social media, but also through both crowdfunding and crowdsourcing. This virtual world of collaborators, when we make a video now and we need a voiceover, we go to a crowdsourced site and we go through all the voiceover options, and for $5 we can get a voiceover of 50 words. We have collaborators all over the world now. And we're not just collaborating with them on the creation of content, but we're already starting to share our content. In the past, we've had, in the world of media, working with multiple platforms, the aspect where each platform is in some way led by a virtuoso. The transition that we're in now is that every single person in our audience also has an instrument in their hands. And they're playing along. They're insisting on playing along. So our days of orchestrating narrative and putting narrative in the world based on our concept of what that narrative should be, they're over. We're now putting pieces of story into the world, and we're building collective intelligence around how that story wants to be told. We're working now in the world of quantum storytelling. We're connecting theoretical physics into narrative to understand how we can put story into the world. My mission in life is to put the core mythology of humanity back into the world. We're living in a time of fragmented social structures and fragmented government, nation, and the belief is that this is happening because we've lost our core story as humanity. This is an example of the technology that we're working with now.
Worlds. The kind of worlds we want to create. Storytellers are becoming the gods of creation in virtual worlds. We have the tools and the capability to create the kind of worlds we want to see. current emerging technologies enable us to break the borders of the physical world and merge into the imaginative realm. The first law of magic is thought creates. What kind of world do we want to think into creation? Virtual and augmented reality technologies are hitting the market right now. We are witness to an explosion of emerging technology in a field that was previously reserved to research facilities and the military. With the help of these technologies, we are bringing story into people's lives in remarkably immersive ways. This has the power to compel great change.
This is not the future. Every single one of these products is on the market right now. As content creators, this is what we're creating for now. So going back to World Without Oil, the idea of play the future before we live the future, we have the ability right now to render the kind of future we want to see and to have our audience enter that future and live it. It's that kind of visceral experience that's going to allow us to model and create the new world. I'm going to share a call with you. This is not a project. This is a mission.
I cannot predict what form this new myth will take, but I believe it will transcend cultural boundaries and represent global consciousness. This would be the philosophy for the planet, not for this group, that group, or the other group. When you see the Earth from the moon, you don't see any divisions there of nations or states. This might be the symbol, really, for the new mythology to come. What if modern history prevents you from knowing the whole story? Time to start telling the biggest story of mankind. We need to be 300 storytellers. We need you. Now.
This story, this mythology is merging out of the overlap that now exists between theoretical physics and esoteric physics. We've reached a point in the history of humanity where the reserved teachings of esoteric schools and esoteric physics is now being overlapped by current science. And out of the intersection of that emerges a vast story of humanity. It doesn't deal with time as we've come to think of time. It doesn't reflect but a small fragment of what's in our history books. This is information, this is story that's existed in esoteric archives for thousands and thousands of years. That's the story that we have the imperative now to tell. And this is my personal belief, but my personal belief is that if we can put the core story of humanity back into the world, the fragmentation that we're seeing won't stand a chance, because we will understand what we are. We're not simply terrestrial beings walking around on this beautiful planet. We are a soul force that is a galactic soul force. We have to remember that. And my hope is that if we can play that, we're going to reawaken to that. Thank you.